Excellent. All right. Welcome all to another constitutional assembly. I believe this is the 7th we've had so far, and we might just keep going with them. So bring it to the next page on this. We can get started with some of the asterisk points. Anneloes, if you want to move to the next one. Okay. So this is just a draft. This is certainly not perfect. And this is just an attempt at trying to synthesize the last 6 assemblies we had and all the feedback in the last constitutional document. This is not perfect, and we will be conducting more of these assemblies as required, receiving more feedback in the doc and continuing to evolve this. We're already getting some feedback that, once again, the Constitution seems to have a verbose set of language, more so than most people are happy with. That's totally fine. Whatever feedback you have, highlight it, right click, leave a comment. All of it is incredibly welcome. Cool. So what's going to happen now is we're going to be getting that critical feedback, continuing to evolve this. And once we feel it's complete, when all the feedback seems like it's been integrated and all the comments are gone and basically it's been a boring chatter, then we're going to propose this as an official version 1.0 of this Constitution. And that will require ratification from the current citizens all voting, yes, we want this to be our Constitution. So that's what we're preparing here. Is we're definitely not coming here and saying this is the Constitution. This is us saying we have a draft. We're accepting and looking for more feedback to keep building this, then finally get something ready that's worth proposing. And then once it is proposed and ratified, this will serve as the official Constitution in which the game guide is going to be referencing and trying to embody. So that's kind of the process going forward. But then, of course, even after this Constitution is ratified, it can continue to be evolved through using that ratified feature that we are launching here within the next month or so, hopefully. Yeah, so that's kind of the process where we're at, where we've come from, and where we're going. So any questions on this before we dive into the Constitution today? Easy. All right, well then I will pass it over to Anneloes, and what she's going to do is go over a little bit of the thinking on this current Constitution. Oh yeah, never mind. I have one more thing I wanted to share with you. The first draft, it was an amalgamation of different constitutional templates, open source terms and conditions, historical constitutions. It's kind of like some of the best things, at least from my limited perspective, what I thought ought to be part of a constitution. And that's what was the foundation of the first Constitution that we were playing with. What we've done here is we've rethought the entire foundation. And this is what Anneloes is about to present. It's giving us a different way of organizing this Constitution. That's a little bit different than our old one, and certainly much better than anything we've had before. But again, this is just an attempt. So if nobody likes this approach, or if you don't like this approach, please say so. All feedback is most certainly welcome. Okay, so that's all of the foundations here. I'll pass it over to Anneloes.
Thanks so much, Rieki. And I just want to ask anyone who comes on the call, if you can please mute yourself. That just makes it a little bit easier with background noises, because especially when I'm going through the slides, I can't do the unmute. So if you can do that yourself, that would be wonderful. And as Rieki mentioned, this is indeed all in a continuous process of co-creation and input. There is a methodology behind it, which we shared as well last time. And that is called here the Thrivability Compass design. So that comes out of other work, which is really about how understanding or looking to apply what are these different informational dynamics and potentials that life has already given to us. So where this comes from as a foundation is the understanding that nature does a remarkable job, and nature already has her own living constitution, and that also comes from a deeper understanding that life itself as a unified reality. So on that basis, it's about saying, if we now take the architecture of living systems and the living constitutions as our foundation, as our guideline, then how could we apply that, and how can we work with that then really as a navigational tool? And where we're navigating here to is towards thrivability. So we will be giving, some wonderful calls and courses in the future about all of this. So I'm just going to guide you through it really in highlights. And so what you see in the compass here is in the center is the purpose, and that really starts with what is our deeper core potential, what's the core potential of seed, and then it goes into the evolutionary principles of life and what are then the ways to actualize our potential, and what are then the directional values as well, both inner and outer. And what can we see then as the deeper architecture principles of life itself, and what are our commitments that are those beautiful flames around here that are required for being able to actualize and bring into being our potential for thrivability and regeneration. So here you see in the compass design how that unfolds. That basically means that we're starting with a little dot, a little black dot. That's really our cosmic potential that we all come in life with. You could call this our seed. So all of us are really a seed of a beautiful living vision that is calling us together right now for this time. And so that means that also that larger vision, where we already are together in our shared inspiration, is seated within us. And that's that little black dot. And then it unfolds the compass to help us understand what are then the evolutionary principles of life, so that if we harmonize with that and we apply that, then we'll be able to kind of grow in wholeness and grow from that place of unity. And that is the second spiral and the boundaries around that. And then from that you see here the little blue stripes, and this is then how these 3 evolutionary principles in each of the 4 directions come into being, and how from that place of unity and also this singularity, we become the many and we become the diversity, and we grow into complexity, but in such a way that we still remain unified at deeper levels of being. And then in the next circle, you will see there's suns and moons around it, for both our outer and our inner growth. And out of that manifest then 13 circles, which are here representing 13 principles of the cosmic architecture. I just want to ask if can anybody who's not yet muted, can you please mute yourself? That would be really helpful. Thank you. I'll just wait. Or Rieki, can you mute the people? Okay, great. And then for the next one is, if you want to bring that into being, then these are our commitments, which are these 16 flames. So what we're working with here in the Constitution and also the game guide is to really seeing that seeds is a living quest. So it's a quest for all of us together to see both how can we transform what doesn't work, but also how can we give birth to new ways of being together, and really the foundation of a whole new civilization that's based on thrivability and not duality and not division and not zero-sum game competition. So we'll just guide you a little bit how we've been applying that. And so what you see is then that design of the compass that is really applied to the first part of the Constitution, which follows also the same sequence in the numbers in terms of the vision, the purpose, the number 1. Just want to ask again if somebody who hasn't muted yet, if you can please mute yourself. Thanks. 3 principles of evolution, then 5 guidelines for the seeds operating system.
Then I can take care of some of that stuff. So
yes, let me just do a stop share because it's very distracting. Let's make you. Okay, there you are. Yeah?
Yeah, perfect.
You got it? Great. Okay, there you go. Good. So on the first part of the compass, we've been applying that to part 1 of the Constitution, and we're going to go through that in details now. And then in part 2, this is the governance aspect, which still included a lot of the former designs as well. but then it's also, you'll see there Article 13 added, the earth, to really honor also how she has a voice here and the rights of nature. So here we come with the declaration, and again, this is based on listening with all of you, earlier input and visioning together. But feel free to just let us know, or in the comment section if you feel something is missing, or you want anything to change. Just your voice counts, so just feel free to share that with us. So while we go through the declaration, I'd like to ask you all to just close your eyes for a minute, and I'm going to be reading the words to you really from this deeper intention of what those words mean, so that just for a minute we're going to experience this. So I'd just like you to imagine now that you're really standing on the foundations of a whole new civilization and a whole new time. And that beautiful little black dot that we saw earlier, and the seeds, that you are a seeds of this new civilization. You are also a code for it. You have a purpose within it. And you have a lot to contribute and to receive from this as well. So just really feel us standing all together on the constitution, the living constitution of a new civilization, as we, the people of Earth, commit to co-create through this constitution as our living compass, the evolutionary systems, cultures, and tools for thriving civilizations and the regeneration of our planet. This is our declaration. And just let yourself feel those words now and receive and experience. And keep your eyes closed as we now go to experience the vision, why we are doing all of this, what brings us together. And as I'll be reading the words for the vision, allow yourself again to experience these words as a living reality that you are already part of. A vision of a thrivable world in harmony with the ecologies of life, where spontaneous cooperation, regeneration, and inclusive opportunity for all people is the new normal. Drinkable rivers, fertile soil, nourishing air with abundant life, invigorating food for all life. Economies of life that cultivate purpose from a place of care and inspiration, and reward reciprocally by creating value for all. Humanity has become a wise steward as a caretaker of our earth and future, enhancing and cultivating balance, beauty, and the conditions for an increasing diversity of life to thrive. And just take a minute to breathe into this beautiful vision. And also to share your love, your energy, your passion in this field of seeds. That is really our foundation for bringing this vision alive. Good, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And then we'll go now a little bit more in details to part 1 of the Constitution. So Article 2, purpose, to co-create and provide humanity with a diversity of tools, systems, resources, and cultures required to joyfully co-create thriving civilizations while regenerating our planet. So from the purpose, we really start with the seed, our core potential. Anybody who's coming on the call, please mute yourself if you haven't done so already. Thank you. And I won't be reading all of the words because they are there and it will take a lot of time, but just want you to understand some of the the thinking and the feelings behind it. So Article 3 then is really guiding us more deeply into the 3 principles of evolution based, and these are principles that are coming out of new paradigm research and science, to have a whole different understanding of, of our universe and life. Where the first principle is really how can the universe exist and evolve as a single unified entity, an undividable wholeness. And the second principle, you'll see now that there is something added to the image below, and there is where we have the spiral now. So where the black dot was also about the principle of unity, the universe as a single unified entity. The second principle of evolution then is really about how does the universe and all of us and living systems evolve, so that we can apply that principle. The universe evolves coherently through increasing embodied complexity. Yeah? And then for us, the challenge as human beings, of course, is how do we work with that diversity and that complexity so that it still remains unified and whole at deeper levels of our being, and doesn't become divisive and degenerative as we see so often. And the third principle, you will see in the image below that there is a circle around the spiral now. And that is that systems, living systems, life itself creates also boundaries. Boundaries can also be a condition of a womb, can also be a cocoon, but it creates also these safe spaces in order for not only that to be evolution, but that also evolution is a process of a self-actualizing process of consciousness. And this is where this principle also really helps us to understand the systemic conditions for our own learning process and developing together, and how are we going to be growing and expanding and evolving this renaissance as a self-actualizing process of consciousness. And that brings us on to the fourth principle. So here you see now those 3 principles, early evolutionary principles. You see them as 3 blue lines that are moving in 4 directions. So as we are now also expanding, diversifying, growing in that complexity, there are principles that are guiding and unfolding that. And these are based on 5 archetypes that we're also piloting now in both Seeds, Haifa, and Samara. And they are based really on archetypal patterns that we've seen in the process of metamorphosis, transformation, but also the archetypes of the new era that we are working with. So the first set of protocols was all about the new architecting those new codes and protocols. So as an architect, what does it mean? What do we need to understand about that? And that's detailed in the Constitution also in terms of the governance aspects. The second one is more the archetype of the future creatives. So it's about how do we as seeds and also expand future possibilities? How do we create possibilities for possibilities? The third one is where we are really developing our evolutionary capacities together. So where seeds is a learning journey. And as an evolutionary learning journey, how do we make it safe for each other, enjoyable? How do we grow and learn together? How do we give the appropriate feedback? All of that comes under 4.3. And 4.4 is where we are really the pattern weavers. And so we're working with a pattern that connects. And so here we're working towards integration and collaboration with other networks and systems and communities and building the bridges. So this is really where we are creating the mycelial network and the root systems, so that the thrivability is truly foundational. And then 4.5, this is where we are as seeds. We are the storytellers. We are co-creating a new story and inviting everyone to be a part of that. So it's all about communication. How do we communicate this? How do we make sure it's also accessible and universal, and that people from different cultures and languages can join? So all of that comes under 4.5. And that brings us down to the values. Again, these are the values that have come out of all the different community inputs. And you'll see there that some are positioned as suns and some as moons. And what it represents here, that there are values that really help us to expand and go outwards. But as we go outwards and we expand, it's also important that we have the coherence within, which is the moon. And so you can see, for example, here where we have more the outward value of exploration, but we also need to make sure that we become reciprocal. We have openness so that we can really engage with others But then we need to make sure that that's also based on integrity. We also need to have that courage, of course, because this is a whole new learning journey for all of us. We've never been here before. And that courage needs to be grounded also in trust, of course. And it requires a strong commitment, what we're all doing here together, but let's hold that commitment with compassion so that there is a gentleness to it as well, and there's love. And in Article 6, then where you see in the image here, these, you see 12 circles, but the 13th is really again in the center. So the 13 around these are basically how we've worked out what are then the architecture protocols. So if we now further specify what that means in each of those steps. And these are kind of the titles of those 13 architecture protocols. And in the Constitution itself, it's detailed much more. And so you see then here as well, you know, these are wonderful, even slogans for ourselves or principles that we can really reflect upon and on what it means to be open source and code, and what does it mean to always enable and encourage choice. So, because if there's no choice in the system, we can't evolve it. Here you'll see in number 3, we need to include these spaces to dream, architect from the future, capture the carrying capacity, but also increase it. Encourage the diversity, communicate inclusively. So you can see already that each of these protocols that are here, they are also intentions for us. And in the Seeds learning journeys, we'll be working with that as well. What does it mean to be transformative and developing our capacities together? They're also great points for us to continuously evaluate. Are we doing this? Yeah. Are we being a good future ancestor? And are we allocating prosperity equitably? Do we design in fractals so that we can scale holistically? Are we enhancing the fertility of the earth and of our world by creating abundance regeneratively? And then 13 is really always an open space. Let's dream into this together. Let's keep it open to be co-created. Let's keep listening for how we continue to be informed also by life itself as we are bringing this vision into being. And that brings me then to the 16 commitments. So here we have these little fires that you see around. They really represent that beautiful flame in our heart and our passion and our commitment to really live by these principles and these values. And we've written that out as a quest, so that again, as Seeds is a journey of discovery, it's also a quest. The 16 commitments then have kind of 4 categories of this quest. And the first one is really about understanding the necessity for the change of becoming the required people. In the first part of the quest, we feel the inspiration from the future, and you know, we're making that conscious choice, and we are also caring for that choice, because choices needs to be kept alive in our hearts with our care, and we are investing in the future of our choice with our passions and skills and talents. So really, you know, love your input in this as well, and to just see how that lives for yourself as well. If you feel for yourself which commitment resonates, which am I already living by, where do I perhaps need some support. So in the second stage of the quest, we're looking at how do we develop then the architect tools together so that we can all be architects of this journey towards thrivability. And these are then our commitments towards developing the Seeds architect tools, and understanding as well that our talents, passions, love, and wisdom, yeah, they are also tools. So not to only think about tools as something technological, but that our, yeah, even our own powers are tools, because it's about how we apply that. And then the third stage is about bringing in the allies and the partnerships, and partnering with the earth and the larger universe, and allying also with our future ancestors, and you know, play well with others, be a good partner, be a good ally. And also let's celebrate and honor those transition moments of this quest together through ritual and play and song, art, dance, and you know, all other ways of celebrating those moments, so that we really breathe life into the culture and heart of this Renaissance. And then we're building our new worlds while transitioning from the old. That's the last stage of the quest. It's really about how are we now applying truly our new capacities, our vision, our care for each other and the earth. And so these are formulated in these commitments. How about how we're applying that and living also in and being the new world, as the last commitment 7.16 is showing. So that brings me then to the governance. Rieki will share this part. There's one other article I want to share with you, and that's really about Article 13, where we've included the earth because it gives a voice to the earth herself and also recognition of the rights of nature, and that we're all indigenous to our earth. And that means we commit also to include the voice of the earth and our natural world in all that we do in seeds and how we evolve the protocols. And we commit to honor the indigenous stewardship of a place and the indigenous custodians who have had their amazing constitutions. Most of those are oral constitutions, and they're incredibly important, so that we also really honor them, their role, and include them in what we're doing. So Rieki, I'm going to just bring this one back to you, and then you can take it from there.
Sure. Just put a little pin in this. There's about 15 more minutes, maybe a little bit less. I'll try to be quick with me sharing, and then we're going to jump into some breakout rooms for everyone to give feedback. And anyway, it'll be fun. So let me share my screen real quick. I'm going to jump to the actual Constitution here. Oh, let's do that. Perfect. Oh, maybe Anneloes, if you wouldn't mind just muting him. All right. So what I wanted to share real quick was in Article 6. What Anneloes?
Sorry, Rieki. Let me interrupt you. I can't mute him. George, can you please mute yourself, because the button doesn't work when I click. That's it. Thank you. Okay, there you go, Rieki.
Yeah. So you were just sharing in Article 6 was the headers of these articles. But what's so important and what we'd really want to tease out with the wisdom of this group is in each one, we talk about the designs and programs. So how we actually go about ensuring that we're openly sharing knowledge. Or for example, when we come down here to encourage diversity, how do we actually do that? Well, we need to make sure we program pursuit of anonymity to protect members' superficial traits. So we reduce discrimination. So it's like when we talk about how we actually go about meeting this design criteria, we need to get in and get it very clear about how we're going to be doing that. And that's what's so important about this Constitution, because we're going to be referencing this whenever we make code changes to the seeds game. So if a change was going to come that would reduce pseudo-anonymity and not protect members from superficial traits like race, gender, sexual preference, or whatever, then we would reject that update and say it's not constitutional, right? So again, that's why the Constitution is so important and why we're putting so much time into it, is because it is going to be that article or that document that's referenced for any governance changes going forward. Cool. So more on governance. Let me go down to those sections here. This is what stayed since the last Constitution. At least the majority of this hasn't changed too much. If anything, it's just become a little bit more clear. And this reads a little bit more like a terms and conditions, helping people really understand their rights, their responsibilities, what they're signing up to, what they're obligated to, that sort of thing. So it jumps down, has visitor rights, resident rights, citizen rights. It tells you exactly what you get at each one of those different status levels as you move through the seats. Something really important: one human, one resident citizen. So you're agreeing to that when you agree to the Constitution. Governance. So this section talks about how we actually go about making decisions. So the legal jurisdiction in which we're making decisions. This is really important, is that seeds doesn't actually need to lean on any currently existing nation state or any otherwise legal jurisdiction, because we enforce all of our outcomes within the seed system itself. So it's not actually a requirement that other legal systems find this valid, as those systems are not required to enforce arbitration and governance outcomes within seeds. So that's also why this Constitution, the game guide, is so important, is because we're designing this that we get to create all the rules. We're not leaning against other legal systems in order to enforce these outcomes. Getting into what citizenship means, I'm not going to break down into this, but just talks about the different areas that you have a right to participate in governance and what that looks like, and then how governance actually works. So go ahead and read this section if you're not familiar with this already. How governance works, your right to be able to delegate your vote. So if you don't want to vote yourself, you do have a right to be able to select someone else to represent your voice for you. And making amendments. So we have a section on how you can amend the Constitution. Currently, it's set as the highest impact threshold. So in the seeds game, there's 3 different thresholds for how we change a code. There's the low impact, medium impact, and high impact. Depending on if it's low, medium, or high, depends on how many people have to vote in favor of making that change and how much support it needs to get. And changing the Constitution will always require the highest impact in order to make a change here. Which is always greater than a 2/3 supermajority. Okay, so a lot of this is just kind of the details. Article 10, this one's fairly open because this is regenerative arbitration.
Rieki, we're only seeing 6.6. So maybe just go your screen to.
Oh, how boring. I thought you guys were following along.
It will be easier to follow you.
Thank you for calling out. So, okay, so that makes sense. Yeah, so 6, okay. Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. I was carrying on a different screen, one of those having 2 screens. Is it moving now?
There you go. Yeah, okay. That's it. Now we see Article 8.
We're all following along with me down here. Okay, yeah. Anyway, so this is what I was talking about, your rights and responsibilities from visitor, resident, citizen, etc. One human, one citizen. I don't want to go over this too much again, but the legal jurisdiction is what I was talking about before, is that we do not require other legal systems to find this valid. Yep. Citizenship. Okay, so this is the areas where you have a voice in governance. So I'm kind of just repeating what I thought you guys were already seeing. Sorry about that. How governance works. Okay. Delegation rights. Again, you have the right to delegate your voice. And K, making amendments. This is where I just brought stopped. Is everything has the highest impact thresholds. Okay, so changing the Constitution is always going to be the biggest change that we can make, which is why it's so important to try to get this current Constitution as close as possible as we can to write, because it's going to take quite a bit of change in order to change it, as it should, because once we set this in motion, we don't want it to be, too dynamic and too volatile an environment. People want something to be able to depend on. So it's really important to have it be the highest impact. And finally, it's the seeds game guide. So a lot of how we actually go about enforcing this, what the protocols actually look like, how the game's played, all of that is going to be laid out in the guide. And that'll be getting released after the Constitution. And we'll be having some calls and sessions just like this to actually really explore the game guide. A little plug here, we're going to be doing an architect academy to go through the guide, really understand it, help people who want to get in and tease it and become an architect themselves to propose different changes to the guide itself, would be attending that academy. So stay tuned for that stuff. Constitutional Council, this one's really exciting. It's for those who are familiar with how blockchains are kind of run, is the blockchain needs a block producer, somebody who's actually creating the blocks and putting it on the chain. So this is what the Constitutional Council will be responsible for doing. They're the ones that are actually creating the data and putting it on chain. And they're going to be the final arbiters, I guess, to determine if code should go through. So what's going to be is we can set this number, but currently it'll be set for about 21 of them, and 15 out of 21 have to agree in order for a code change to happen. So you can kind of think of this as being a Supreme Court, so to speak, where it's their job is to uphold the Constitution. And what's really important is one of our principles is always that citizens are always in control. So unlike the current, Supreme Courts of nation states today, where someone gets elected to the Supreme Court, they're there for life and they just own all that power, is the members of this Constitutional Council are always voted in by the citizens, and they can be removed by the citizens at any point. So if citizens feel that this council is not representing their voice effectively, they can remove them from the council. But then the council then becomes more like a service provider. They're here to enact the will of the citizens if the citizens can't automate it themselves. In cases where the citizens can't automate it is when we create new code. So if anything new comes to the table that's not part of the game guide and it requires us to actually do an update to the code base, and that's where the council comes in. And here's Article 10. It's not very created yet. So you see TBCC, what this means is to be co-created. So whenever you see this, it means that we're still up to bring in more wisdom to actually create that process. But this is how we do arbitration. So this is going to be one of those areas we're going to start exploring more. Currently, it's just about flagging members. So this is going to be released with a new passport where you're going to be able to flag someone if you think they're a bot or if they're engaging in fraud or anything of that matter. And that's the only way right now that citizens are going to be able to police the network is through that flagging motion or flagging action. But we want to create better ways of dealing with arbitration and handling conflict. So this section is intentionally left open for us to create more processes for how we do arbitration and how we do it in a regenerative and a restorative way. Okay, and then finally, we've got Article 12, which is just some miscellaneous items, which is like how Seeds is designed. It's not a security. It confers no rights or revenue. You know, Seeds is open source code owned by nobody but everyone. Copyright and personally identified information. Everything you post on chain is there for everyone to see for time and all eternity. If you don't want your personal information to be, publicly available, do not post it to the blockchain. So this is something that everyone needs to understand deeply, is that once it's on chain, it can't be taken off. So don't put anything on there that you don't want to be there, because you can't reach out to anyone and ask them to remove it. It's just not possible. So this is something that everyone needs to be really familiar with. Okay, and finally, risks. Everyone loves risks and liabilities. So this is why I said it's more like a terms and conditions here, is understanding that this is really cutting edge and experimental technology we're playing with. So there's a chance that we might lose the entire fiat value of the tokens that we're holding, or this entire experiment does not work out. That is one of the risks that we're potentially facing here. I do say to be co-created here because I put one of the risks here, but I'd really love for other people who've identified some of those risks to really be able to help spell them out if they know what some of those risks are. So this is a section to really uncover that and unpack that if anyone's familiar with these and really wants to help with that. Finally, is the liability, is that you waive all your rights to press any charges in the legacy judicial systems. So everything we're going to be doing in the Seeds world is on-chain Seeds decentralized governance. So if you have an arbitration or a governance dispute, we need to be handling that on-chain within our own ecosystem. So what you're doing here is you're waiving your rights to be able to sue people in the old systems and the other legal jurisdictions. So again, it's really important that people are understanding that, because this is fully committing and agreeing to playing in a new way instead of trying to rely on old ways of playing. So again, this is where you retain your rights to be able to do arbitration and on-chain governance. Okay. Finally, electronic signatures here. Every time you do any action within Seeds, you're signing your right here. So anytime you conduct a transaction, you're signing your agreement to this constitution. People will also consent to the constitution when they sign up to Seeds in any way, but this is what's happening on-chain, is your actual account name will be signing, yes, I agree to this constitution. Where you can terminate that agreement is if your account has been inactive for 3 years, then you're no longer a member of Seeds and your account could be terminated and your agreement is now null and void. So this allows for accounts that go unused when people leave, that eventually the citizens can recover those accounts and people can be free from any agreements that they don't want to be part of anymore. It's no partnership, joint venture, agency. Seeds is a decentralized open source software. It's not a legal entity. This is not a business. This is not a company. There's no ownership here. It's open source code. It's a decentralized governance system. So again, there's nothing bounding us in the old legacy systems in order to take to court and that sort of thing. Wow. Okay, so some of that is boring stuff, but I think it's all really important to cover and that everyone is very familiar with, but I will end it at that. And now what we have is, we have about 45, 50 minutes left in this call. What we can do is, if there's any really important things that people want to bring into the space right now, we can open it up for about 5 minutes. And then what we're going to do is go into breakout rooms. So there's going to be groups of 5 or 6. And then the 5 or 6 of you can get to know each other, meet each other, talk about what you think is the most important things that we need to be talking about and discussing here, if there's anything missing. And then amongst your group, come up with some of the top 3 things that you think are important. And then we can bring those back to the whole group and we can unpack and get a harvest afterwards. Cool. So with all that being said, if anyone has any comments about that process or about anything that was discussed so far, feel free to unmute yourself and speak up. I know there's a whole lot unpacked all at once, so you can also leave this space, the moment of silence if nobody has anything. Mark.
Hey, Rieki, I wanted to ask one question about governance. So when the proposal is put in for ratification and the seed citizens agree and make it so, should there be something in the Constitution about implementation? So a new rule comes in or a new thing has been proposed and voted upon so that it should happen. But is there something that should link to the implementation? How does it get implemented?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Right now, that's in the game guide under governance section. It talks about that implementation and the life cycle of a proposal. But I think that's actually really important. I'm glad you brought that up. And if you leave a comment in the Constitution under Constitutional Council, that's actually where that implementation process is going to take place. So put it there, and I'll remember to, actually put it in the Constitution, because I think you're right. That does belong there. As far as changing the Constitution itself, this is really cool. We're just putting it together, but it's essentially going to be just like Google Docs. We're going to try to make it that way, where it looks like exactly as you're seeing on Google Docs, but you're going to be able to right click on it and then make a proposal. And then if that proposal passes, it'll automatically update it to the proposal that you made, so that it doesn't actually require a central party to update the Constitution. We could be doing that real time, and it'll be really cool. Anyway, Carly, you unmuted yourself, so I'll give you the space.
Yeah, about the conflict resolution part, is anyone now working on that, or can we put together a group to start to figure that out? Because I know we got some great minds.
Absolutely put together a group. If anybody is interested in really diving into restorative justice and what that looks like and how we can implement here, reach out to Carly then, if you're putting your hand up for that, because I think that's a really important group to be happening. And that's why we left it to be co-created in that space. So yeah, awesome.
I'm wondering.
Awesome, thank you, Rick.
Sorry. I'm wondering if there's any plan for a physical location in the future.
A physical location for Seeds? No, because Seeds is open source code that exists nowhere and everywhere. But as far as villages of people that are using Seeds, absolutely, and there's already a lot of them across the globe. Haifa is one organization. We want to have more physical locations. So I think there's going to be a lot of physical places that are representing what Seeds is about, but Seeds itself will never exist in the 3D world, because it's a financial system and a governance system. That's more kind of like asking, where does the US dollar exist? It just kind of exists everywhere and nowhere. But anyway, maybe that was helpful. All right, so what we can do now is let's break out into breakout groups. Let's have about 5 or 6 people a group. Cool, so I'm gonna send you all to a breakout group. The big questions we're asking is anything missing in this Constitution? Anything that we want to add, any changes we want to make, any thoughts at all that you might have, or you can just meet each other and come up with some cool things to share. Try to find the top 3 or 4 things that you as a group align around, and then have somebody be assigned to come back and share with this group. So we'll break you out for about 7 minutes, 8 minutes. I see a lot of people leaving, so maybe you didn't want to do breakout groups, but hey, so I'm going to make some smaller rooms. Cool, so I have a little bit fewer rooms now, and assign somebody to come back, and I'll see you all in about 8, 9 minutes. So enjoy that.
So Rieki, maybe let's just add that the link that you see here, which is the assembly documents, the Google Doc, feel free to just add your thoughts and comments there. That's a copy of the draft Constitution, but really see it as a creative space. You can mess around whatever you want in that. It's not the official document, so that's why we created a duplicate so you can play around with that. So that's just the link, the last link in the chat. Okay, enjoy.
Cool. So we have some people sticking around, and we can make this a group ad hoc if you don't want to leave to the other groups.
I was thinking that as well. Let's do that.
Is anybody here that didn't leave to their other room?
Yes, you can see if you open the breakout rooms in progress, you have the little squares at the bottom, and you can see who's been assigned but hasn't moved. Which could be because there's a technical problem or I didn't see it. So all of the people who are here, can you all hear us? If you're deciding to stay here, then great. Maybe just put on your camera if you can, so we can have a conversation here. Welcome, Iga. Anything great. Okay, I'm just going to pause this. Oh, it's automatically recorded, right, Rieki? Otherwise, we could pause parts of it, the recording.
Yeah, this is automatically recorded.
Okay.
But this part is the part that's being
because we're missing the big one.
The breakout rooms have all the great stuff going on. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
I'm
good.
missing out on that. Okay, well, let's just have a great call here. From those of you who are here, any questions, anything you'd like to share? Maybe we can share the screen. You want to share the screen again, Rieki, so we can just go. Might be easier for people to give feedback. So for those of you who are in this room, this is now going to be a breakout room as well. So we really welcome your inputs. You can't find the feature to move to another room. Okay, let me have a look for you, Tiberius. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you see 4 squares that's called breakout rooms. If you click on that, you will see the room that you've been assigned to. So yeah, you were assigned to room.
Not really. I'm on my phone, so I don't see it. Oh, what is that?
Oh, yes, you didn't see it. Okay. No problem. I think what we'll do, we'll just, if you're here, then just stay here and let's work with that. So we would like to share. Anyone here?
Well, I will just jump in and introduce myself.
Yes.
My name's Ethan. I was turned on to what you guys are doing through my friend Sid here I'm based in Boston. And I don't feel like I know enough about the Constitution to be able to really contribute right now, but I'm very excited to stay informed and add where I can, and I look forward to getting more familiar with it. So thank you so much for this program.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe in this moment, then you can share what excites you about this, what brought you here, or what you're even up to.
Sure. Let me see. My background is in public art and curation, and have been really for the last couple years focused on soil regeneration and how that works in a community setting, urban setting. But right now I'm lucky enough to be on a piece of land down in Martha's Vineyard with a friend here who is really interested in transforming this into a community and a productive food forest, everything from bees to compost to livestock. So I'm personally very interested in learning about biodynamic, a little bit more about biodynamic agriculture, about Korean natural farming. And so a network like this is very exciting to me. I'm also involved with the legal cannabis market here in Massachusetts, which is about 5 years old. And I see that there are a lot of farmers and people who want to remake that industry, and a currency like this might be valuable there. And so I'd love to be able to maybe link this community to that at some point.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Have you connected with any of the ambassadors or ambassador group or anything like that? If not, actually,
Just, I don't know what Sid is, but Sid Harvey is a friend, and I know that she's been involved. So
okay,
she's
cool.
up in Maine right now. So yeah, happy to connect.
Because that is definitely one of the areas that we want to help support and serve is not just for cannabis, but certainly hemp, and how hemp could be a regenerative, everything, food, fiber, medicine. It's kind of the whole enchilada.
Absolutely. You know, my sense on hemp is that there's a real need for processing capacity. And so coming together to have some sort of processing facility or co-op or what have you would be super valuable to the hemp farmers here in the Northeast.
Awesome. And banking. I mean, that happens so frequently, is that, you know, companies that are dealing with that, either a bank will just close down their business, restrict their funds. I mean, one that was dealing in Colorado had hundreds of thousands of dollars frozen, even though they're operating totally legally. And there's this thing. Anyway, it's crazy. So yeah, certainly we're here to be able to support that movement. Cool.
Thanks so much for sharing that. That's great. And CC, while you're here, I'd love to get your input as well. How do you feel about the Constitution as a very active member, founding member of Seeds?
Oh, you know, I always wanted to give the floor to everyone else, Anneloes. But
yeah, now we're giving it to you.
Since we all ended up here, you know, I've stayed out of it for the most recent changes, except for hearing you guys and your excitement. And so I want to give this a really thorough look tomorrow. Obviously, I think the compass that you created is so beautiful. I was just kind of, what's this?
Oh, it's just the screen.
Oh, you're not looking at the same thing that I'm looking at. Okay. So the compass I found really beautiful. And for me, just imagery and bringing that into this document is really important. Obviously, the power of these symbols, I think, are going to just make this even more potent out in the universe as it goes on to change things. So thank you, you know, for having your voice, for allowing the universe to flow through you. And I'm excited to dive into this more tomorrow. What I do want to see, though, which I don't necessarily see, but again, I haven't immersed myself in the new version, is specifically equality for animals as well, because that's a huge part of what I am passionate about, is recognizing the other life forms, not just animals, but other life forms on this planet as, you know, having consciousness as well, and giving them fair,
Yes.
equal, you know, space on this document.
I love that. I love that. And thank you also for this, you know, very good feedback. And have a look if it's sufficient for you in Article 13, or if you feel we need to explicitly mention more. And there is also some of the sections in the protocols from the 13.1. So, and anywhere where you feel it's missing, just add it. We'll make sure it's there, because that was very much this the spirit of Article 13 about the earth herself and the rights of nature.
Yeah, so that might be interesting as Earth and, you know, non-human life.
Yeah, exactly. Because we have a very human-centric lens always, and bias, of course.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, Haifa and Seeds have always been so good at representing the human. And that's so wonderful and so needed in what we are missing from the old paradigm. But I just personally have a call, you know, from nature specifically to stand up for her in a really different and invigorated way, so that we can look back. And I think you did, there's so much that mentions it, but I wanted to be like really explicit that we're here for the earth and living beings as well, because I think at least from my perspective, where my relationship with seeds is that nature kind of knocked on the door and said that this is what needs to be born. So I just want to make sure that we always remember.
Beautiful, very true. Love that.
We have the other rooms closing now, so they'll be coming on back here.
Oh, coming. Perfect.
About 20 seconds. It's down here.
Uh,
All right, start welcoming everyone back now. Excellent. All right, I'm not sure if you all remember the breakout rooms you're in, but on the off chance you did, whoever was in breakout room number 1 and was assigned to share.
Wie komme ich jetzt wieder zurück? Sorry.
Oh,
It's not even going to go to address the question. So, but we
in
will,
breakout room number 1.
that would be.
And with some of you, I can't mute you for whatever reason. So I'd say, yes, if you're not speaking, then just mute yourself. But from who was in breakout room, the breakout group number 1, if one person can share.
We had Forrest, Douglas, Joaquin, Satya, and Stephen. So one of them.
Well, I can jump in. Hey, everyone. Yeah, we had a beautiful conversation with Boris here from Germany and Douglas and Satya from Canada to really sort of see how we stand at the deep end of the pool and are ready or not to jump into it, right? And trying to grasp a little bit what is this all about, right? So understanding that there's a constitution, understanding there's a passport app, and there's a lot of things that are really need to be processed and talked through. And for most of the people, it's a new world, right? So and a first encounter with the blockchain too, right? So what is all this about? So they're stepping very slowly into this new world, but feeling confident at the same time that this is the right place, the right people, the right time, right? And wanting to do that. So that was a resonance I heard throughout our conversation here very loudly with Stephen too. Stephen. All right, that's it from group 1, I believe.
Awesome. Yeah, so this is definitely the advanced section of the whole seeds journey. So certainly not an introductory course here. So apologize if anyone was expecting that. This is more diving at the deep end of rethinking our constitution and cultures here. There'll be other spaces for exploring that. Room 2, if anyone was assigned there. We have Dan, Danielle, Fee, Lena, Melanie, and Moni.
Maybe I can share. So there was a point on the constitution and the language that's used, and language means different things to different people and how that could be interpreted in different ways. And then there was also a point on, I guess, reflecting on currencies and local currencies that were being tried out in the UK, for example, that didn't work mostly because of the sort of low rate of adoption in which people who had the currency didn't have a way of spending it. And then there was another point which was on how if we don't see it as a money, but more as a currency for fun and for play, and how might that sort of change the way that we perceive things, or how might that allow that transformation, that transition to be something that is more playful, that can pave way for new possibilities. And then also sort of finally rounding back on the point of how this is a very digital and online experience, and the app itself, currently it's the forum is probably where most of the interactions at, which isn't really that many, and it can be quite confusing for a newcomer to understand all of the different information, and if there are certain onboarding processes, and how, because it's not a physical location and space where we can organically get to know each other, and Discord might not necessarily be the best sort of platform for that, then how might this online experience sort of still pave space or honor the kind of interactions that we could otherwise have had in a physical sort of setting? So thinking of the sort of, I guess, localized perspective, or how might we better connect with one another? Yeah.
I could leave a space in between calling on room 3 if anyone felt so inclined to respond to anything that was shared there. I'll take a hack at it though. Absolutely everything about, seed, well, not everything, but a lot about seeds is a game. We are wanting to make this more joyful and engaging and fun because 1, why not? And 2, because I think that's incredibly important. So the new passport that's coming out is really aligned with that, but it's also really clear to understand the distinction between the passport, what's happening there. So the passport is a centralized app, why Seeds is a completely centralized open source code that exists nowhere and everywhere. So the passport is just one way of tapping into that. You can think of Seeds as kind of like the internet, and the passport is like one website that's on the internet. So the passport is just one way of helping people engage in the world with Seed, in the world of Seeds. So when we're thinking about the Constitution, it's going well beyond just how one application is going to be playing that game, i.e. the passport, and more like how all applications can be playing that game. It's setting the framework for how the civilization is set up. So it's a little differently way of thinking about it, but to say that one more time, because I think this is so important, what we're talking about here at the Constitution and Seeds itself is more like thinking up the structures of how the internet should work or how our financial system should work. Not necessarily thinking up how one website should engage with that, which is more like the passport, being just one way of engaging with it. Haifa's also built the Light Wallet. So we've already started off demonstrating how there's 2 different ways of playing this game that are almost like semi-competing, but collaborating and cooperating. Hopefully there's a lot more. And we've set a framework so that anyone could then take an app and build it and put it on Seeds and connect in that world. And we've created financial incentives for it. So someone could create a governance app that's not even part of Seeds, or not even part of the passport, it's not part of the Light Wallet, it's a completely different app, not connected to Haifa. Anyone on this call can launch one of those, and there's actually financial incentives to reward the developer for having built that and connected it into Seeds. So that's so important when we talk about decentralization. Seeds is fully decentralized, and that means that no one entity owns it. So the passport isn't the only way of accessing Seeds. It needs to be able to be accessed by a myriad of different ways. So either way, this is all to say that yes, the passport is taking the approach of trying to make this a game, but somebody else can take an approach, play the Seeds game, and make it entirely not like a game, and have an entirely different approach than how the passport's doing that. And that is welcome in this game as well. Hopefully that was helpful rather than more confusing, but I'll leave it at that and pass it to group 3. They want to take the floor.
I think we were group 3, but I can't know for sure. But Tom Middleton, Lumi, Jason were in our group. And the one we enjoyed, of course, being with each other. But one nice thought that I posted in the chat section was Tom's suggestion that this document, when it's completed, could have the benefit of artists that work on the document, so that we have visual iconography and spiritual images that make this more alive and animated and joyful to absorb.
Big yes, big yes. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a personal message to me at the beginning of this, messaging if there was a designer who was going to get involved here. And yes, we're absolutely going to do that. We need a lot more imagery here. Also, if anyone's on this call that has design experience, feels particularly called to do that, or if you're watching this call, definitely reach out to us. Yeah, and let's make that happen. Otherwise, we do have some people that will get to it when they have time. There you go, Lena. Awesome. Let's connect. Cool. Any other thoughts that want to be shared on that reflection?
Satya and John here. I put it in the chat a couple of times. I guess the question for us, because we're such newbies here, like literally somebody sent me the link 3 weeks ago and I loaded on the app on my phone and I had all kinds of problems trying to join and understand how to do it. I think I'm joined, but I really don't know. And I don't really understand anything about what the app does. And I'm very interested, very curious, completely feels aligned and wondering, is there any kind of onboarding process with newbies like us that don't know anything about blockchain and the app?
Ooh, so yes, and that's been our goal for the last year and a half or so, is getting, how do we make this obtainable to people who have no idea about any of this? So that's what the focus of the next passport is really about, is more of the forum, more human-human connection, but also more of this journey element where there's this little AI robot doing thing that's going to be guiding you on a journey of learning about all of this step by step and really breaking it down and making it simple for people. So that's coming next. Unfortunately, my only suggestion right now is to kind of just wait, because the other suggestion to join Discord is also overwhelming to everyone because there's so much happening in there. So that's not going to be a good suggestion. So yeah, I would just say, just stand by. The next passport is designed to be able to help with that.
Or the ambassador.
And
I would suggest as well.
Yeah, there's also the Ambassador Academy for anyone who wants to, like, their heart's saying yes to this, they feel called, they want to start investing a lot more of their life and time into this, then the Ambassador Academy is really there to help catch those people, really help them, land, feel at home, understand what's going on here, and, guide them through this journey.
I mean, I found that this process today really helpful, so just even, I guess I somehow got signed up and I've got a whole bunch of stuff on my calendar. So if I just keep attending those things and just listening, I feel like that's going to be helpful, like today.
Definitely. And thank you for showing up and bringing your wisdom here. Awesome. Then we will move to group 4.
Or maybe we should take group 3, because the other group that just presented themselves, there were some other number, I guess.
Okay. So the real group 3.
I do remember we were group 3. So we had a very nice process here. There were 3 people who were very new to seeds, and one, I think, had some more experience. So it was good to get to know each other and try to orient in this big, that's the big issue, I think, for many of us. But we had one thing up, and that is when we discussed how the system tries to understand and work in the same way as nature. We had a bit of resonance on the idea that also decline and death is part of the life cycle, and thinking about how is that built in. It's not only birth and growth, but it's also decline and death, to leave room for new birth and growth. That's just a reflection and on the, maybe on the communication.
Yeah, that's a very important point. And in the Constitution, that's reflected in 2 ways, namely that we're saying we have to hospice the old, as well as at the same time midwife the new. So that's in order to be regenerative. There's also a section there where we are compassionate with what is dying. and needing support. We even had at one stage death by design, that it needs to be a way of that people understand death is a part. But then we were not sure if everyone was going to accept that. I got a bit scared about that. So, but it's, yes, it's very much there. It's definitely not only about growth. You see, this is also where in the values you have the expansive values and the contracting values. Even in the spiral that you see with the principles, the spiral moves in two directions. In one direction, it expands and then it diversifies, and in the other direction, it contracts and then it integrates. But that is a part of that cycle, so that it can then regenerate and renew, and there can be a rebirth again. So thanks for sharing that.
And if I can add from the same group, I don't know if it's a part of constitution or like something somewhere else, but we see that the currency, like in the nature, the currency is more like a bi-componential system, like in the body of the human, again to mimic the nature, we have a store of value like a fat. So we have fat to store value, and we have blood to transmit value. And we believe that the seeds should also mimic that and have these two components, like a blood currency and fat currency, not like we have in a legacy financial system. We have only one tool which try to place both roles to store value and transact, and both roles played bad or not efficient. But I'm not sure if it's part of constitution or some other design principles.
Ooh, yeah, so that would be more specific, putting it in the game guide of how we live out these principles in the Constitution. The Constitution is totally open to having lots of currencies. It talks about diversity and encouraging that. And I highly recommend that we continue to diversify with more currencies within seeds. Seeds, the current currency and how it's designed is really only designed that way because it's familiar. It's what people are used to. It looks and acts kind of like a dollar or a euro, just a little bit better designed. That was necessary to design something that's very similar to what we're used to, so that the bridge of joining is a little bit less. Everyone's already talking about how intense it is to try to learn about all this. We need to reduce that as much as possible. But then once you're in, that's where the whole world of an ecosystem of currencies could emerge. So we've just recently finished the code for this gratitude token as a different form of currency, where everyone gets the same amount each cycle, and then you can give it out. And then we see the flows of the gratitude token, and then we can send them something like seeds. So this is a different way of being able to coordinate and distribute value without having to give value yourself. Kind of like a hug. A hug benefits both people that are giving that hug. You don't have to take anything in order to give that gratitude and love to somebody else. So anyway, this is absolutely a part of it, and now I encourage you to read the game guide, and you can find out where that might, exist. But that's another rabbit hole for another time. And the last bit of death. This is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, also part of the game guide, but programming in a 33-year life. That if you can't get 99% consensus in 33 years, then the game ends and the whole protocol shuts down. So that could be one way of building in a kill switch. That's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's part of that same thought, is we do need to consider death and transition, what that looks like. Currently, seeds could evolve beyond it, so it evolves itself to that point that it might not even be recognizable that it did kind of die in a sense. And we hope that kind of happens already, is that it becomes unrecognizable to what we started today, maybe 20 years from now. So we're building that life cycle into it. Or we could even build in a kill switch and say, hey, we've got 33 years to figure it out. If not, the game ends. So either way, there's some ways we can have that, planting seeds there. Any other thoughts that want to be shared before we move on to the next room? Awesome. Then I will say room 4, if you didn't already go. It's showing your face, but if we're not able to hear you, or at least I'm not.
Sorry. Mute button. So we had a really good comment about this idea, and consensus is not everyone's force, that there's no dissent in the group. What's that?
Is
Can you hear me, Ricky?
Share with it for any? No, it looks like you're not. Maybe you could just turn off the video and then we can at least hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Much better.
Yes. Ricky, can you hear me now? Okay, cool. All right. So the idea behind consensus, not that everyone is for a certain thing, but that there's no dissent. And one of the things that I've thought about in the past is if we could have a comments section when we're doing things on the DHO or in the co-op, that if you vote something down, that you have to leave a comment. And then if you vote something yes, you can leave a comment, or that comments are just enabled so that people can endorse proposals. For example, Sarah brought up the point, like if there was a technology thing that we were voting on, and, you know, people don't know about tech, but there's someone like Alex that's endorsed it, that's like our tech guy, then it's going to give some light to the people that like the idea but don't know about tech and can vote yes. And the same thing goes with the distrust comments, because those are really, really powerful when it comes to the voting process. And without having a way to know why people are distrusting your proposal, you have no way to revise it to bring it back. So I guess the comments that we want to add to the Constitution or to the building of it is, how are we going for consensus? And my personal mission is to get a comments section built into the voting process.
Oh, I'm glad you brought this up, because then it can help frame some things. This is all really incredible feedback and helpful. However, it's a lower order below like kind of the Constitution. I don't think the Constitution should talk about how we go about making decisions necessarily, but laying like the meta framework of what would be a great process to, you know, try to arise to, so to speak, because we're going to do way better at coordinating and making decisions than voting, and the Constitution lays the foundation for that. We're just voting right now because it's the worst thing out there, but it's the best thing we got. But we can do a lot better. I don't think we should trap ourselves in the Constitution by getting nuanced about how we make decisions necessarily, at least on the protocol layer. Where that type of conversation exists in is the game guide, because that's where we get specific in how we're trying to reach the ideals that's laid out in the Constitution. So in the game guide, when you're talking about, you know, if you distrust it, you have to put a comment, that'd be something that would exist there. So all this, again, is incredible feedback, less relevant for the Constitution because we don't want to get that specific here, much more relevant for the game guide where we do want to get that specific. But please type that feedback up in the—
What Rick,
so we have it.
what about just the simple idea of consensus over, or just consensus? Like, it's one of the principles of sociocracy, and it's something I think we're trying to adopt here, but have something about consensus in the Constitution.
Definitely could do. I would say leave it as a comment in the governance section, and as long as it's not too specific and it's talking more about patterns, I think there's definitely space for that. Because we don't want to tie ourselves down to doing consensus, because it's just one type of decision making, right? We want to be open to exploring a lot of different types of decision making without having to change our Constitution in order to do so. If you know what I mean.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
May I speak to that, please?
Certainly.
I'm sorry I was late joining. I'm afraid I was tied up with other Zoom meetings, but I'm really happy to be here. When it comes to consensus, we arrived in one organization that I was on the board of at a formulation, which was that all decisions are taken by consensus unless a consensus decision is made to take a vote, to take a majority vote. And then that decision in itself specifies what the terms are. So it's possible to have your cake and eat it, is what I'm saying.
Beautiful. I see two other hands raised. So if you have your hand up, just feel free to unmute yourself and speak up. Okay, Marilyn, it's just your hand still. Oh, okay. Never mind then. Does anybody have any feedback or thoughts about what Carly shared or Marilyn about?
Rieki, there was Nicholas and Morgan had their hands raised. Just want to check in. Morgan, did you still want to speak? Or? Yeah.
That was just a thumbs up. I like that.
Oh, thumbs up. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any thoughts? Mackenzie, there you go. We got a hand raised.
Hey, Rieki, how are you? Yeah, I just had a couple quick questions about the early. There were some project programs and grant programs that I had participated a couple of early in the marketplace, and then had looked at a couple of the grant program write-ups about a year ago, and had started kind of headed down that path, and I just didn't know if those were still happening, if those were still active, if those programs were still accessible.
Yeah, so definitely campaigns, alliances, all of that's still happening, very active. The last cycle was more than the previous one. The one before that broke a new record. So yes, that's all happening, picking up speed, and very alive in how we do governance. So that's all very active. However, less super relevant to Constitution. So just send, myself or one of the ambassadors a message and we can help you out there. So that said, we're going to keep moving through the rooms and try to weave in all this wisdom. I think room 5 already went and thought they were room 3. So we're going to jump to room 6. Which Thomas, if you're still on the call, how's it going, brother? Then maybe you could speak for your group.
Hey, hi, good day, good evening to all of you. I don't know if can you hear me?
We can
Hey,
hear you.
Rieki, how are you doing? So we were 3 with Gregorio, and I forgot the name of the third one. So in fact, we were 2 people like not fully aware of the current system. Like I've been in touch with SIDS 2 years ago and did not really catch up. So I was expressing that at that time it was difficult for me to dive in and to understand. And I joined a few meetings and that I felt were kind of messy. So I kind of stayed a bit. I was following it from the outside and just seeing the last email. I dived in, and I'm curious to see where you are at now and to catch up. And so Gregorio was sharing his experience of using SIDS for 2 years and how he's interacting with the network and the platform. So it was very interesting for me, and I guess to have this experience and to be able to have a more concrete vision of what's happening, how it can be applied. So that was about sharing his experience about SIDS. And also expressing at the same time how at that time it was difficult for me to fully comprehend, understand, and how I can participate and understand the system, which have been expressed already, I guess. So how to board to join in, and yeah, that's what we were discussing. So thank you very much for this meeting.
Oh, beautiful. I'm glad you're able to have that, brother. Good to see you. Great, then we will jump to room 7. Which is
okay, we were in room 7. I was there with Anna and Tiberius, and we got talking about the game guide and the difference between the game guide and the Constitution. And Tiberius asked a very good question, which is how is the Constitution actually implemented on chain, which is also kind of, I think we discussed that while there is a game guide and the game guide contains all the rules, and then the contracts implement all the rules. And above all of that is the Constitution. So the Constitution is first, and then there's the game guide and rules, and then there's the smart contracts that implement the game guide and rules. And I think that's pretty much all we talked about there. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, to frame that again, is the Constitution is at the center. It's how we continue to evolve the game. So ideally, the Constitution is changing less. Maybe we might evolve it a few more times, but it's something that's supposed to be really firm and hold as our foundation. Why the game guide around it is going to continually be evolving and probably even rapidly changing. Why our Constitution, like our goal of creating a thriving civilization, probably won't change very much. But how we go about creating that civilization likely will change dramatically. So that's kind of how those two relate to each other. The game guide is meant to, rapidly change, maybe even undistinguishable to how it starts, but the Constitution is meant to still be that foundation that changes very little unless required. Which is also why we're so involved in trying to get as much wisdom as possible into that Constitution before releasing it out there in the wild. Okay, cool. So we have just a few minutes left. I want to open up this space then if there's anything else that wants to be shared while we have this time. 2 participants that raised their hands. Awesome. We'll go with Benjamin.
One thing that's big on my mind with Seeds when it's launched and everybody's hearing about it is ease of use. And I've been thinking about the best way to do that, chatting a little bit with CC here, and thinking, would a card be the good thing? Or do we have a sustainable material for a card that's issued for people that want to use it? That would be an immediate transfer to their fiat currency. So basically, when you sign up for Seeds, you can use it anywhere and everywhere. In addition to that, I was just thinking, or along with that, with any new tech, it's like, does it talk to the old tech well? So if I get a Seeds passport and I get a Seeds wallet, can I easily switch it to PayPal or my bank? Or can I move that currency around quickly and easily in the way I feel comfortable and familiar for me to use it? I think that's going to be one of the key factors, like a linchpin for Seeds. Is one, our premise is great. Like what Seeds is and how it's put together is fantastic. But when people jump on, can I just incorporate it to all the other ways that I'm currently using money? That's kind of a thing that I would like to have clear. I think that might be valuable for everybody.
Ooh, I'm going to respond quickly, but I also want Joachim to jump on and mention just 30 seconds about peer swaps. So stand by for that, Joachim. So Seeds itself is a new financial system that a lot of things can plug into. So you mentioned that card. There's a lot of crypto cards that are already out there. We can integrate with any one of them. It just costs a few $1,000s, at most maybe like $20,000 to integrate with one. So should the citizens actually want a debit credit card that they can integrate with, that's a fairly simple process that just costs a little bit of money. We wouldn't have to build our own card, and I don't think that we should. I think a lot of the things that we spend our own time and resources building ought to be stuff that's not already out there. So when it comes with like ease of adoption, like credit cards, debit cards, exchanges, payment gateways, all that stuff, let's just integrate with the ones that we care about and not try to recreate the wheel. So that's a fairly easy thing, but there's something that we are doing with integrating with PayPal and all that stuff. And I'll let Joachim speak just real quick to that because we're right on the dot and there's a couple other hands.
Sure. Thanks, Rieki. Thanks, Benjamin, for the question. And it's the right question. To me, it's like when you tap into sort of the Seeds world, you want to try it out with some amount, some ways of understanding how it works, but then also be able to exit it, so and then go deeper next time and then come out and understand it more and more. So one of the tool sets that Rieki was alluding to is called the PTM, peer teller machine. See it as a way to connect to another peer with Seeds, and then you could get some Seeds from that person. You create a relationship with that person, and then have a transaction between the two, and that could be intermediated via PayPal, via Zelle, one of these typical providers to send money from A to B. But the idea really is to sort of receive some initial amount of Seeds. You can play around and do something with it, right? And if you decide not to go further, then you could reverse that and go the other way. You're offering and you're buying and selling. So we introduce sort of multiple ways in a peer-to-peer fashion, right? We're not a centralized operation here, right? We want to decentralize this as much as possible and go from peer to peer to peer to peer, right? To engage more and more people into the world of seeds. Hope this helps. Back to you.
Exactly. And with that decentralization, that's why Seeds is up there, existing everywhere, able to plug into a whole lot of things because it's exactly what we need to do. Cool. So Mackenzie, got your hand up. We got one more hand, and then I'll also let Anneloes say some closing remarks, and then we'll close out. So Mackenzie.
Apologies, don't know how that got up. Move on.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Julio.
Julio.
Hey there. Sorry, I missed most of the call. I was with the time zone shift. So, but I wanted to mention about the gratitude token that was being brought when I arrived. So I was reading the Constitution on Section 8 when you have the rights and responsibilities. And I was thinking in reading that the residents and citizens, they have a share of some tokens like trust tokens and also the right to vouch and the right to flag. So I was thinking that maybe we could add to the residents the right to, of a share of gratitude tokens also, because that's also what we are. I know the gratitude tokens for now, it's like an experiment. We are still evolving the experiment, but it makes sense to add this to the Constitution to mention that residents should have some amount of gratitude tokens, residents and citizens, because that's how we are designing it. So I just wanted to, that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That would be a good example of how we can evolve the Constitution. Say we ran something else on top of gratitude, like abundance tokens. That's another side experiment happening. That's a whole other game theory. Don't worry about it. But say that did succeed and we did want to make it part of our living Constitution as a foundation of what people earn, then we could then make a ratify changing the Constitution to add that. So that's one of those cases where it's like, yeah, let's upgrade our Constitution to make sure that this is a right that's always with us. All right, I will, oh, Douglas, one last hand and then to Anneloes, and then we'll close out and respect the time boundary here.
All right, can everybody hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I can't see myself. I just wanted to jump in and say, from what I'm sort of seeing in the whole EOSIO community, there's going to be a lot more options as far as liquidity for Telos and easy ways to get Telos in and out. Like Rieki was saying, these aren't the type of things that are really on Seeds to solve. These things are happening in sort of the space. And one thing that's really exciting to me is these DeFi swap pools. And there's a site called alcor.exchange, which recently added swaps for wax. So hopefully they can very soon add a DeFi swap for Seeds as well. And that's going to provide liquidity and help people to, you know, get Seeds easier. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there for the people who might be new and trying to understand how this whole economy is going to work in the future. Just that shining light that there's a lot of tools coming out. It's going to be easier for people to get the token and spend the token as well.
Ooh, invitation for you to reach out to Nick. He's in this call right now. Maybe Nick, if you can send him a message and be part of our regenerative finance circle. So it's kind of like the evolution of DeFi from degenerative to regenerative and how we build like financial systems around that. And we have our own decentralized exchange we're about to launch too. Either way. Cool. Anneloes messaged me about next steps. So with this Constitution, we've sent it out there. We're getting a lot of comments and feedback on the doc. Definitely go to that doc. Please try to read it within the next week. Give your comments and feedback. What we're going to do is integrate it. If it seems there's a lot of thoughts, some of them pretty critical, then we're going to host some more of these calls until we can integrate that wisdom. If the feedback we get is superficial and minor, then we're going to integrate that feedback, make the minor changes, and then feel this is good enough to propose up for ratification. So you signal whether or not you think this is good or not by just leaving a lot of comments or not. So please do that. Please bring your wisdom to this process, and then we'll see how this evolves. Great. So we'll give 1 week and give some time for that to be able to, for you all to be able to get that feedback. I'm going to pass it to Anneloes if she has anything else that she wants to add.
Just a big thank you. Thanks so much, everyone. All of you who have been giving input, giving your support, are showing up, making this work. That's the success to me. Really, is all of us here together. Thank you so much, and we look forward to the next steps. And have a great day or evening wherever you are.
Beautiful. Thank you all for staying an extra 7 minutes. Have a beautiful day, and we will see you all in the Noosphere and in the Seeds world. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.